Good morning and welcome to the Lake Effect, Barrie and Muskoka's Fine Home Building Podcast. I'm here this morning at the Sandbox Center in downtown Barrie. The background may look different than the other episodes that we've shot just because we are now in a studio room that has these beautiful pictures of Barrie behind us. I'm with Don Campbell, who is our resident expert in wholesale glass sales. He also has a strong history in angling. And formerly ran an app, a fishing app. So I'll let him describe that to you and how it applies to fine home building in Muskoka, because that is the purpose for a lot of people when they go to retire. They want to get out and do some fishing, and we thought we'd talk about that a little bit today. Okay, so welcome, Don.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So tell us a little bit about, give us a very short synopsis of what you do for Accurate Glass. Start with that.
Well, I handle all the wholesale sales. So I look for customers that buy high volumes of glass, mainly exterior railing companies, office partition companies, and basically anyone that buys, on the higher side of volumes.
Okay, and then we had something here that some of the viewers may or may not know about, something called Cast for Glass. So what was that all about?
So a few years ago, we decided to have a promotion for customers, my clients, as well as homeowners that used us. And basically, they would use a lure that we branded with the Accurate logo. It was one that I chose, specifically. It caught mainly pike, but you could catch everything with it. And they would catch fish with it and take a picture, and the person that caught the biggest fish, or the one that we liked the most, won a prize from us.
Okay, and so can you describe why was it you that was involved in the Cast for Glass, or what do you have to do with fishing? What's your history with fishing?
Well, fishing has been a huge passion of mine. It's funny, I was saying this the other day, there's 4 types of people that fish. There's people that don't like to fish, people that like to fish, people that love to fish, and then there's me. It's I don't know why, but I've always loved it. I grew up half in Florida, half in Ontario, and I used to beg my parents to take me to the docks where we lived in Florida just to watch the fish come in, until we figured out that actually daycare was the same price as party boats. So instead of daycare, I would go on a party boat and I'd come home with dinner. So from there, my love of fishing was born, and it's always been more than a hobby. And basically, I've always just wanted to, retirement for me is owning a charter boat, taking people fishing, and I'm really passionate about it.
Okay, so we'll let everybody see some of the items that we have here that we could show what the Cast for Glass was all about. So, Cale, if you want to pop over to my screen here, and I will hit play. So this video was shot in Georgian Bay, and this was the video for Cast for Glass, and you can see the lure right there. And so we ran this program a few years ago. We're looking at maybe possibly bringing it back with our customers, the GCs, and the people that we supply glass to, as a fishing and angling contest that we run. And Don was the one who advised us on how to do that. So Don, you were involved in the past in an angling app that you described called Pro Angler, right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll just jump to the screen for a second here. You can see this is the About page from Pro Angler, and you have the chief captain. His name's Ray Rosher. Do you know Ray Rosher?
Yeah, so I was in charge of, I created the app. I was co-founder, and I did all the content, created a lot of different features like algorithms for best times to fish and stuff like that. So one of the captains, our main one, Ray Rosher, he's a world-renowned captain. Millionaire and billionaires pay him to pre-fish and then lead their yachts into fishing tournaments around the world.
Okay, were you just an employee at this angling app, or were you?
No, I created it.
You created it?
Yeah, so I was the co-founder. So it's an interesting story. It all started here in Lake Simcoe. So with my fishing experience throughout my years, some of my friends would ask me to captain their boats or take them fishing. So my one friend, they had a pretty big boat on Lake Simcoe. And so every year for his birthday, I would take him and his friends out in his dad's boat, which was like a decent size, almost like a yacht. And then one year, we're all fishing for lake trout in the middle of the lake, which is pretty hard in summer. So we're, deep dropping. And one of his friends was the former digital media manager for Home Trust Bank. And he said, oh, with all your knowledge in fishing, we should make an app. And it's 2011. And I said, what's an app? I didn't even have a smartphone at the time.
So it would safe to say that you were the angling guy, not the fishing guy, or sorry, not the tech guy.
Yes. It was quite apparent. I didn't even know what an app was. I still had a flip phone at that time. And so he asked me to be consultant. And then I looked into it and I saw the opportunities. So after some negotiation, I said 50-50 partners, or I didn't want to be involved. And so he agreed, and we started the app.
Okay, so to lend to your fishing cred, okay, I'm going to have Cale jump to the laptop just for a second and show some pictures here. So here's a picture of you with a young girl, a young boy. Is that your daughter?
No, it's my friend Sarah's kids, and that's their first fish. So at my house at the time, I had my pond stocked, or I stocked it myself. I worked at a bait shop, so anytime game fish came through, we were supposed to throw them, like you're not allowed to sell them. So I would take them and bring them home into my own pond. And she told me her kids had never caught fish. So I said, I guarantee you, if you come to my house, you'll catch fish.
That's an important thing how does this relate to Muskoka cottages? So a lot of Muskoka cottages, not all of them, but some of them are owned by people who are, they've been successful in their careers, or their cottage has been handed down to them from their ancestors and their grandparents, and they're having little kids and their grandchildren or friends' kids, and the kids, it's for some of them it's either their first fishing experience, or it's the first fishing experience they're going to remember for the rest of their life. And in my experience, and I don't know if you agree with me, that if you don't want kids to get skunked multiple times and then they will never like fishing, but if you make certain that they catch the first time or the second time, then you can cement a lifelong sort of pleasure in fishing.
Exactly. And I always joke that kids don't really like fishing, they like catching. So yeah, it's very important that they catch and enjoy it. So usually, like, my daughter caught her first fish at 6 months in Lake Simcoe. It was a perch, probably like the size of my finger.
At 6 months?
6 months old, yeah. Well, I basically reeled it in beside her.
Well, but she could walk it, carry a...
Oh, no. We just rented a pontoon boat out of Guilford, and I caught a perch and kind of like got her to touch the rod as I was reeling it in, and she didn't really want to hold it, but I still count it.
Gotcha. So the first fish my son ever caught, he was probably about 2 years old, and it was near Harrison Lake in British Columbia. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what happened is my son and I he was 2.5 years, 3 years old. He was walking. Mm-hmm. And him and I went with a cooler to wash out the cooler in a river, like a stream that was coming down the mountain. And he was holding the cooler with me, and we put the cooler under to let the water in. And then when we pulled the cooler back, there was a baby salmon in the cooler.
I'd say that counts.
I would say, yeah, that's more trapping than fishing, or something like that, or cooler netting or something like that. But he was like, wow, it's something alive. He's never seen it before. I mean, a fish to a kid that young looks like an alien, like a totally foreign sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and sometimes they're afraid of it, but I think it brings kids closer to nature and the appreciation. Definitely, I'm excited to take my daughter fishing more often too as she gets older, because it gets them off the screens. And it's an important activity here in Muskoka. It's a huge industry. It's the world's largest hobby. And it attracts a lot of business, and it's just a good pastime. It's kind of my form of meditation.
Okay, so let's bring this home to the lake effect. Okay, so you have people who are shopping, to buy a property and renovate it, buy a property and improve it, or add buildings or outbuildings. Quite often to build a boathouse, something like that. So let's talk about that specifically from an angling perspective. Now, I know there's lots of hobbies people pull up, when they have this thing in their mind, I'm going to buy a cottage, I'm going to renovate it. I'm going to build a fine home, somewhere, in Halliburton or near Huntsville. And some people, they're envisioning the craft room. And some people are envisioning, entertaining and cooking and outdoor spaces or hot tubs or whatever it is. But there's definitely a group of people who are envisioning them standing on the end of the dock with their kids or grandkids or friends fishing and catching something. What has changed in the last few years as far as, dock construction is concerned, or boathouses that would lend or not lend to, that being a good habitat for dock fish and catching something, catch and release or catch and keep, whatever you're doing?
Well, there's a big emphasis on the environment these days, which is good. I know in the last 20 years, they changed the rules with septics. So now it has to be pumped into holding tanks, which has increased the water quality, which is great for fishing. As far as dock construction goes, they used to be built on what they call cribs, which would provide a lot of cover and space. It attracted mainly a lot of panfish. The invasive rock bass, which is almost natural, the numbers they're in now, but those would attract the big bass. So at my in-laws' cottage, we had the most rock bass, and so the largemouth and the smallmouth bass would come in, and you could catch them right off the dock with the crib system. Now that's kind of obsolete, just because the environmental toll it can take, and you have to bring in a lot of rock and stuff like that. So people are moving towards the steel construction now. Basically, fish will hide under cover. So, even people on boats, you'll see them casting at the docks. So there's always going to be fish around any cover. The lack of structure underneath prevents those panfish from having places to hide, so it doesn't attract them as much as the older docks would. But it's still a good spot. Mainly what you're looking for is structure or drops or any source of bait fish, which will attract the bigger fish to come in and eat them.
Okay, so I think what seems to be quite popular in Muskoka right now when it comes to docks in particular. So you have docks that are just free-floating docks. You have docks that are, an appendage to a boathouse, but the structure is similar. They're giant metal tubes that are welded, filled with air and welded, and then there's a wooden structure over top. So I noticed that at my dock and many of the docks that I visited over the last few years are of that construction type, and there's some great contractors. Just so everybody knows, what we might want to do at some point in the future, another episode, is bring on some dock contractors that we know of that we do work with. And these are very good docks. They last a long time. When they do have problems, they're easily diagnosable and repairable. But the fishing seems to be good. They're not crib docks, so they're not, they're still attracting the fish. What is it that makes the fish? Is it the growth that you leave on the bottom that's attracting the fish? Like the bait fish are eating the green, and the big fish are eating the bait fish. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So, when there's no cribs, other kind of vegetation can grow, which can still provide cover. And really, the smaller bait fish are eating, bugs and different things, like really small minnows. So as long as there's cover underneath.
When you say cover, what do you mean? Like a shade from the sun? So a structure above that's a shade from the sun?
Yeah, but it can also be vegetation as well.
Okay.
So the crib system didn't allow for vegetation, but now these open systems underneath are allowing for vegetation, so it's still attracting the fish, just not quite the numbers as the cribs did. And then also, too, the cribs were filled with rocks, which was attracting rock bass, which would attract the larger bass. Where now it's more probably perch and stuff like that. But then now pike are coming in eating those perch, and bass will as well. So it's just a different dynamic. And then plus, too, usually docks are built around drop-offs, so you can jump in, and that really attracts the fish. And with different elevations, in the water, it allows the fish to go up and down depending on the water temperature, and usually they'll be deeper and they'll come up shallower to feed during the summer at least. So it just allows for more opportunities.
Okay, so I mean, it's anybody who's watched the podcast to this point, obviously is very interested in fishing, is probably looking at building a cottage and wants to take into consideration not ruining the habitat, like especially if they're buying a knockdown cottage. Let's say they're buying like a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot, a small cottage with a crib dock, an old crib dock that needs to be removed and replaced. So you're not an environmental expert, okay, but I would say you're definitely an angling expert, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What type of docks can they consider specifically replacing that crib dock, but still getting the quality habitat for fish so their kids can catch off the end of the dock?
Well, now the problem with the crib docks and like the wood frame construction was the ice. And you'd have a bad year like this year. We're having a very cold one where the ice would destroy the dock. So now it's usually steel beams or floating, as you mentioned, floating docks. So the key thing is just the location. You want to have different depths, which is good for swimming as well. And then in the summer months, it doesn't get as weedy or as much algae, which is less enjoyable for the kids for sure. Problem is that weedy vegetation is usually where like largemouth bass are. So like an ideal dock for me would have kind of like an area with vegetation to the side of it with a gradual drop off, an area with lily pads that you could kind of cast to, but then off the dock, like a deeper drop off. And then if you have some structure like the posts or the floating, it will actually attract the fish to come up from the deeper parts underneath your dock to feed on the smaller fish that are living in the vegetation.
Okay. So I'm going to jump to the laptop if you can for just a second and show some pictures of it's a picture of you standing off the back of a boat with two very, very large perch.
Oh, so that was actually caught here in Lake Simcoe. It was a few days after the bass tournament at the Barrie Bass Masters last year. So we were actually...
those bass? Those are not bass.
No, they're perch, but we were actually fishing for smallmouth bass.
Okay.
And so in one of the bays in between Guilford and Innisfil, we were just trolling for smallmouth. It was a couple days after the tournament, and they did pretty well. It was cold too. I think it was kind of like half snowing and sleet. And we hooked up with the perch, and we knew that when the jumbos are around, usually you can get a few more. So those were two of the bigger ones we caught. I think we caught 3 or 4 that day.
So what? I've never seen perch that large. What?
Well, Lake Simcoe is actually known for the jumbo perch, but yeah, those are on the bigger size for sure in Lake Simcoe. Usually like a large one's 12-inch plus, but Lake Simcoe does get up to 14, I don't know, maybe even 15 inches. So it's one of the premier locations to fish for perch in Ontario, and has a big community of ice fishermen that target them, mainly in Cook's Bay, but they could be everywhere really. So you want to fish more like shallower areas. I think it depends on the year, but I know in Lake Erie we fish up to like 50 to 60 feet deep off to Crystal Beach, but in Lake Simcoe usually it's between 20 and 30 feet around different types of vegetation and that. But there's a huge perch population in Lake Simcoe. And it's funny, they've actually benefited from the invasive species, the round goby, that have come in. And when they first came into in Canada, everyone was worried they were going to decimate the fish populations, but the fish actually evolved to eat them, and it actually they increased their population. And now we use like artificial goby lures and stuff to imitate them because they're so used to feeding on them.
Okay, so I want to tell a Don story, a Don fishing story. So you and I have known each other a while. We've gone fishing. There's instances where we're like, okay, we're going to go fishing this weekend, but we can't do it without Don because we know that something really great will happen if we bring Don. Okay, so not to say there aren't other people in Accurate Glass in our company that know about fishing. There certainly are experienced anglers, but I mean, you've got some really good credentials, which we've reviewed here. Okay, so I've got a place that's in Honey Harbor. I don't know if everybody knows where Honey Harbor is. If Cale, if you jump to the screen, this is Honey Harbor right here. Accuse the Honey Harbor General Store. If I scroll out, you can see, in the map of Ontario where it is near beautiful Beausoleil Island. So this is Georgian Bay, okay? And so a few years back, we had some friends who said they wanted to come. They wanted to catch in Georgian Bay, and they had the patience. The mistake that everybody makes where I'm at is they come in a canoe, they come in an inflatable, they come in waders, they come, in a $200,000 bass boat, and they all make the same mistakes. They cast, and 20 minutes later they leave.
Yep.
Okay. Your suggestion was not even to get into a boat, is just stand on the shoreline, and you, I don't know what kind of voodoo you applied to this, but you were like, face that direction, be patient over a time period, use this color lure, and you'll catch something. So I had two friends, Lucas and Mike Ross, who were willing to follow your advice. And I think the real trick is that the fish feed every so often, kind of like people do. Like every 3 or 4 hours, they need to eat something. And if you just wait that time period in a spot where they're living, or that they're living, eventually they'll pop their heads out and they'll go after your lure.
Yep.
Okay? So, I mean, it's not complicated, but the other way to fish, obviously, is to put a lure right in front of their face, and maybe they're hungry and they'll bite it.
Yeah, there's two things. If fish are aggressively feeding, you can cover more area and cast, and they're going to basically hit anything that they see. But on that particular day, it was a little bit slower.
So you remember the day?
Of course, yeah.
You've caught how many fish in your life?
Thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Yes, and you remember those two. Or those 9, sorry.
Well, that day was kind of special. Well, one, because you brought people that wanted to catch fish, so I kind of felt like responsible, and I have a reputation to uphold. So
which you did.
Yeah, I think I usually do, because really, to me, fishing's like a science, and that's why I built the app. There's so much to it. There's it's not just the baits, it's the location, it's the species you're targeting, the trends. There's so many different variables, moon phases, water temperature, low pressure systems. So to me, I like taking into account all that stuff. And then plus to a new area, like I'd fished Honey Harbor before, but we were targeting big pike. So I knew that area was good for bass. There's some pike around.
So let's break to the laptop for a second. I'll show you a picture of that day. Okay, that's Mr. Mike Ross. And there are 2 of, I think we ended up catching 7 or 9 of those. Yeah. And what a great day it is when you go to your cottage. It's bright and sunny. You have patient people. They catch awesome fish. Okay, and then you cook the fish and you eat your catch.
Yeah, there's nothing better than that. Especially like the water quality was really good. So the fish quality was really good. Yeah, that's a really good picture.
Yeah. He's a happy camper. I mean, you really made his day.
We did really well, and it was great because when they were slow, I think we just put out a worm in a spot where I knew they'd be coming by, and we didn't have to wait long. And then I wanted to catch a pike, so I used a spoon on the other side at a different part, and we got a pike too. And then that day, because it was a bit slower, the worms were working, just being patient and letting the fish come to us that day. And we got lucky, and then I really had to showcase my other skill, which is preparing fish. So I filleted it up, and I think we fed, probably like 7 or 8 people that day.
It was a great day. I mean, we sat at the picnic table, we watched the sunset, we ate fish that we caught, added by, my wife brought some appetizers, to the table. I think if I remember correctly, we cooked the fish just in pancake batter.
Yeah, it turned out great, actually. Normally I would use the breading in that, but it wasn't available. So we tried that out, and it turned out amazing.
So let's bring this home again to the Fine Home Building, Muskoka area. Okay, so that was Georgian Bay. Georgian Bay is obviously teeming with life, especially in the southeast corner of it. Mm-hmm. That's because there's lots of vegetation, shallower waters. You're going to find that all over Muskoka. There's lots of small lakes with lots of vegetation. There's also, Halliburton has lots of, and Kawarthas have lots of areas. When somebody's building a house and they're building a cottage, they need to take those things into consideration. If they're expecting to sit at the end of their dock and catch something, there's lots of people who sit at the end of the dock and they never catch anything for years, right? What are they doing wrong? What are those folks doing wrong? I mean, it's not just a cottage construction or location of the dock or creating a good fish habitat. It must also be, that they're not taking into account the depth that they need to be at, or the bait, or the.
Yeah, there's a lot to the bait. I think your first point is the biggest is patience. So I think if you're patient, and you do a bit of research, and you can throw, and you have decent equipment as well. You want to, have the right hooks and decent line and a good rod, because you can catch like perch or small fish on anything, but when you get that fish of a lifetime and you don't have the right gear, you might not get another chance ever again. So you definitely want to be prepared. It's just, Ontario has some of the best freshwater fishing in the world. So it's important to just be patient. But to give yourself the best chances, you want to have the right lures, gears, and just have someone that has the knowledge as well, that can help, give you the information that will help you have success.
Okay, well, just so everybody knows, if they want to contact us, they can just call our number, look up accurateglassproducts.com. If somebody is seriously interested, I'm sure you would be willing to handle a phone call or two, or an email.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's a passion of mine. So I'm lucky enough to have taken clients fishing, your friends, and also my clients. I fish down south in Costa Rica often. So I've brought people tuna fishing and stuff. It's a whole different world, which I really enjoy. But yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to help, not just with their glass needs, but obviously fishing. It'd be a pleasure.
Yeah, just, not going to get too far into the details, but we met one of our customers who has an island cottage. They decided that they should use Accurate Glass to do their showers and exterior railings. And in the conversation and being friendly with the homeowner, we discovered that we're going to be, going to where his place is, or near his place in Costa Rica. I'm really hoping that you're going to be down there at the same time.
I'll make sure I am.
Please make sure you are. I want to catch some big fish, and I know that your advice is indispensable in that regard. Okay. Thank you for watching the Lake Effect podcast. You can contact us at www.accurateglassproducts.com. And as always, we've had the same phone number since 1969, 705-722-6767. We hope to see you on the next episode, and we'll wrap.